Well, hi there. Welcome back to Reading the Chronicles of Narnia. My name is Dale Sullivan, and I've been reading the Chronicles of Narnia to you and making comments as I read. We've already read the first book in the series, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then we read Prince Caspian, and we just finished reading The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And now I'm coming back and we're going to read The Silver Chair. Here is my copy of it, The Silver Chair. You can see what it looks like there. This is the fourth book in the Chronicles of Narnia. That is in the order that C.S. Lewis published them. Now, this story uh, also involves travel, just as Prince Caspian did. But remember, or not Prince Caspian, I mean Voyage of the Dawn Treader. But remember, Voyage of the Dawn Treader was a journey by ship through the seas, going to the utter east, trying to find Aslan's land and trying to find lost princes who had disappeared. This is another journey book. It's about a journey that two children take along with a friend that they'll meet a little bit later in the book, but they're walking in this story, and they have a long way to go. But I won't give the story away at this point. We'll find out more about it. So I'm going to begin with chapter 1, and I'll read about the first 9 pages or so of chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called Behind the Gym, like gymnasium, Gym, Behind the Gym. It was a dull autumn day, and Jill Pole was crying behind the gym. She was crying because they had been bullying her. We don't know who they are, but somebody had been bullying Jill. We know that it's not nice to be bullied or be singled out or made fun of, picked on. So Jill, a schoolgirl, is crying because she had been bullied by someone. We don't know who yet. This is not going to be a school story, so I shall say as little as possible about Jill's school, which is not a pleasant subject. It was coeducational, a school for both boys and girls, what used to be called a mixed school. Now you have to remember that C.S. Lewis was writing this in England in the early 1950s. And a lot of the schools at that time, even though they were called public schools, were really private schools. And a lot of them were either schools for boys or schools for girls. And it wasn't all that common to have a mixed school, a school in which both boys and girls went to the same school. But this school that Jill was in was a mixed school. It had both boys and girls. And that was kind of innovative or a new thing in those days. Some said it was not really so mixed as the minds of the people who ran it. These people had the idea that boys and girls should be allowed to do what they liked. And unfortunately, what 10 or 15 of the biggest boys and girls liked best was bullying others. All sorts of things, horrid things, went on, which at an ordinary school would have been found out and stopped in half a term. But at this school, they weren't. Or even if they were, the people who did them were not expelled or punished. The head, that is like the principal of the school, the head said that they were interesting psychological cases. So the head thought it was fine to let them go ahead and bully and do that sort of thing because they were interesting psychological cases. They could be studied to see what made them so mean. They were interesting psychological cases and sent for them and talked to them for hours. And if you knew the right sorts of things to say to the head, the main result was that you became rather a favorite than otherwise. That was why Jill Pole was crying on that dull autumn day on the damp little path which runs between the back of the gym and the shrubbery. And she hadn't nearly finished her cry when a boy came round the corner of the gym whistling with his hands in his pockets. He nearly ran into her. "Can't you look where you're going?" said Jill. "All right," said the boy. "You needn't start." And then he noticed her face. "I say, Pole," he said, "what's up?" Jill only made faces, the sort you make when you're trying to say something but find that if you speak, you'll start crying again. "It's them, I suppose, as usual," said the boy grimly, digging his hands further into his pockets. Jill nodded. There was no need for her to say anything, even if she could have said it. They both knew. "Now look here," said the boy. "There's no good us all." He meant well, but he did talk rather like someone beginning a lecture. So Jill suddenly flew into a temper, which is uh, quite a likely thing to do or to happen if you have been interrupted in a cry. "Oh, go away and mind your own business," she said. "Nobody asked you to come barging in, did they? And you're a nice person to start telling me what we all ought to do, aren't you? I suppose you mean we ought to spend all our time sucking up to them and currying favor and dancing attendance on them like you do." So she said, "We ought to just uh, butter up the bullies and be nice to them." "Oh, Lord," said the boy, sitting down on the grassy bank at the edge of the shrubbery, and very quickly getting up again because the grass was soaking wet. His name, unfortunately, was Eustace Scrubb, but he wasn't a bad sort. "Pole," he said, "is that fair? Have I been doing anything of the sort this term? Didn't I stand up to Carter about the rabbit? And didn't I keep the secret about Spivens under torture too? And didn't I?" "I don't know, and I don't care," sobbed Jill. Scrub saw that she wasn't quite herself yet, and very sensibly offered her a peppermint. He had one too. Presently, Jill began to see things in a clearer light. "Oh, peppermints kind of help. Sometimes it's best to have something like a peppermint to quit arguing, or maybe a cup of tea. That's what they often do in England. They have a cup of tea. But in this case, he didn't have a cup of tea, of course. So he gave her a peppermint, and they both had a peppermint together. "I'm sorry, Scrub," she said presently. "I wasn't fair. You have done all that this term." By term, she means like this semester or this like the first semester or the first term. She says so. Uh, you have done all that. You've been a strong person standing up to the bullies this term. Then wash out. Then wash out last term if you can," said Eustace. In other words, he's saying, try to forget last term. He knew he hadn't been so good the term before that. "I was a different chap then. I was, oh gosh, what a little tick I was." "Well, honestly, you were," said Jill. "You think there has been a change then?" said Eustace. "It's not only me," said Jill. "Everyone's been saying so. They've noticed it. Eleanor Blackenstone heard Adela Pennyfather talking about it in our changing room yesterday. She said, 'Somebody's got hold of that Scrub kid. He's quite unmanageable this term. We shall have to attend to him next.'" Eustace gave a shudder. Everyone at Experiment House knew that it was like what it was like being attended to by them. Both children were quiet for a moment. The drops dripped off of the laurel leaves. Now, this Eustace Scrub, we met him in the last book, didn't we? In The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. You'll remember that it was Eustace who was a real stinker on the first part of the trip. He was always complaining about things, and then on one island, he ended up encountering a dragon and was turned into a dragon. But Aslan came and set him free from the dragon skin. And after that, Eustace was a new person. He was much more lovable and likable than he had been before. So once he was transformed into a dragon and then delivered from being a dragon, had been he was a much better boy than he had been before, and he was better even when he came back to England out of Narnia. Why were you so different last term? Said Jill um, patiently. A lot of queer things happened to me during the holidays, said Eustace. What sort of things? Asked Jill. Eustace didn't say anything for quite a long time. Then he said, Look here, Paul. You and I hate this place about as much as anybody can hate anything, don't we? I know I do, said Jill. Then I really think I can trust you. Damn good of you, said Jill. Yes, but this is a really terrific secret. Paul, Paul, I say, are you good at believing things? I mean, things that everyone else would laugh at? I've never had a chance, said Jill, but I think I would be. Could you believe me if I said that I'd been right out of the world, outside of this world, during the last holidays? I wouldn't know what you meant. Well, don't let me bother about worlds then. Suppose I told you that I'd been in a place where animals can talk and where there are enchantments and dragons and, well, all sorts of things you have in fairy tales. Scrub felt terribly awkward as he said this and got red in the face. How did you get there? Said Jill. She also felt curiously shy. The only way you can, by magic, said Eustace almost in a whisper. I was with two cousins of mine. We were just whisked away. They had been there. They had been there before. Now, remember that I believe that was probably Lucy and Edmund had been there before, and Eustace had been called into Narnia through a picture. So they were whisked away into Narnia. Now that they were talking in whispers, Jill somehow felt it easier to believe. Then suddenly a horrible suspicion came over her, and she said so fiercely that for a moment she looked like a tigress, If I find out you've been pulling my leg, I'll never speak to you again. Never, never, never. I'm not, said Eustace. I swear I'm not. I swear by everything. When I was at school, one would have said, I swear by the Bible, but Bibles were not encouraged at the experiment house. That's the name of the school. All right, said Jill. I'll believe you. And tell nobody? What do you take me for? Answered Jill. They were very excited as they said this, but when they had said it and Jill looked around and saw the dull autumn sky and heard the drip off the leaves and thought of all the hopelessness of Experiment House, it was a 13-week term and there were still 11 weeks to come, she said, But after all, what's the good? We're not there, we're here. And we jolly well can't get there. Or can we? That's what I've been wondering, said Eustace. When we came back from that place, someone said that the two Peevenish kids, that's my two cousins, could never go there again. It was their third time, you see. I suppose they had had their share, but he never said I couldn't. Surely he would have said so unless he meant that I was to get back. And I can't help wondering, could we, do you mean do something to make it happen? Eustace nodded. You mean we might draw a circle on the ground and write things in queer letters in it and stand inside and recite charms and spells? Well, said Eustace after he thought hard for a bit, I believe that was the sort of thing I was thinking of, though I never did it. But now that it comes to the point, I've an idea that all those circles and things are rather rot. I don't think he'd like them. It would look as if we thought we could make him do things, but really we can only ask him. Who is this person you keep on talking about? They call him Aslan in that place, said Eustace. What a curious name. Not half so curious as himself, said Eustace solemnly, but let's go on. It can't do any harm just asking. Let's stand side by side like this, and we'll hold out our arms in front of us with our palms down, like they did in Ramandu's island. Whose island? Oh, I'll tell you about that another time. And he might like us to face the east. Let's see. Where is the east? I don't know, said Jill. It's an extraordinary thing about girls that they never know the points of the compass, said Eustace. You don't know either, said Jill indignantly. Yes, I do. If only you wouldn't keep on interrupting me. I've got it now. That's the east, facing up into the laurels. Now, will you say the words after me? What words? Asked Jill. The words I'm going to say, of course, answered Eustace. Now. And he began. Aslan, Aslan, Aslan. And Jill said, Aslan, Aslan, Aslan. Please let us two go into. At that moment, a voice from the other side of the gym was heard shouting out, Pole? Yes? I know where she is. She's blubbing behind the gym. Shall I fetch her out? And here's a picture in my book of Eustace and Jill with their hands out and their palms down, and they've been reciting Aslan, Aslan, Aslan. But now somebody is looking for Jill, and somebody else says, oh, she's back behind the gym crying. Do you want me to fetch her out? Jill and Eustace gave one glance at each other and dived under the laurels. The laurels are trees. And began scrambling up the steep, earthly slope of the shrubbery. I guess laurels are probably more like bushes than trees here. And began scrambling up the steep, earthly slope of the shrubbery at a speed which did them great credit. Owing to the curious methods of teaching at Experiment House, one did not learn much French or math or Latin or things of that sort, but one did learn a lot about getting away quickly and quietly when they were looking for one. After about a minute's scramble, they stopped. They stopped to listen and knew by the noises they heard that they were being followed. So they're scrambling up the hill under the laurel bushes, but now they hear that somebody's after them, chasing them. If only the door was open again, said Scrub as they went on, and Jill nodded, for at the top of the shrubbery was a high stone wall, and in that wall a door by which you could get out onto the open moor. The open moor is sort of a place where it's just grass growing and heather and stuff like that. Okay, this door was nearly always locked, but there had been times when people had found it open, or perhaps there had been only one time. But you may imagine how the memory of even one time kept people hoping and trying the door, for if it should happen to be unlocked, it would be a splendid way of getting outside the school grounds without being seen. Jill and Eustace, now both very hot and very grumpy, or very grubby, that is dirty, from going along, bent almost double under the laurels, panted up to the wall. And there was the door, shut as usual. It's sure to be no good, said Eustace with his hand on the handle, and then, oh, by gum, for the handle turned and the door opened. A moment before, both of them had meant to get through that doorway in double quick time, if by any chance the door was not locked. But when the door actually opened, they both stood stock still, for what they saw was quite different from what they had expected. They had expected to see the gray, heathery slope of the moor going up and up to join the dull autumn sky. Instead, a blaze of sunshine met them. It poured through the doorway as the light of a June day pours into a garage when you open the door. It made the drops of water on the grass glitter like beads and showed up the dirtiness of Jill's tear stained face. And the sunlight was coming from what certainly did look like a different world. What they could see of it, they saw smooth turf, that is, a nice cut lawn of grass. Smooth turf, maybe almost like a golf course, a smooth turf, smoother and brighter than Jill had ever seen before, and blue sky, and darting to and fro things so bright that they might have been jewels or huge butterflies. Actually, they were probably birds. Here's a picture in the book showing some birds. See that? Through the door on the other side, there was something flying around. There were probably small birds flying around. Although Jill had been longing for something like this, Jill felt frightened. She looked at Scrub's face and saw that he was frightened too. "Come on, Pole," he said in a breathless voice. "Can we get back? Is it safe?" asked Jill. At that moment, a voice shouted from behind from behind them. It was a mean, spiteful little voice. "Now then, Pole," it squeaked, or maybe it sounded more like, "Now then, Pole. Everyone knows you're there. Down you come." It was the voice of Edith Jackal, not one of them herself, but one of their hangers-on and tail bearers. "Quick," said Scrub. "Here, hold hands. We mustn't get separated." And before she quite knew what was happening, he had grabbed her hand and pulled her through the door, out of the school grounds, out of England, out of our world, our whole world, into that place. Well, I'm going to stop right there. We're going to find out what place it was they went to when they went through that door and out of England and away from Experiment House, where they had been being bullied by them, the bullies at the school. So we'll come back next time and we'll find out. What kind of place this is. They've just caught a glimpse of it. It's very sunny. There are birds flitting around, and there's a very beautiful lawn. But we'll learn more next time. Bye now.